Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special evening here at the Institute for Human Sciences in Vienna. Maksym Butkevych is, well, he has an extraordinary tale to tell. I'm not going to anticipate what he's going to say, but just to introduce him, I'd like to thank everyone from our Ukrainian programs who have. Is Masha here? Oh, Masha, you're in the front row. Masha in particular, who has done a great job ensuring that Maksym is going to feel comfortable here. Maksym is a Ukrainian journalist, human rights activist, known for his trenchant defense of refugees, minorities. This is inside Ukraine, and others who have faced various forms of discrimination. He studied at the Taras Shevchenko University in Kyiv and received his master's from the University of Sussex in the United Kingdom. He worked as a journalist for various Ukrainian television outlets and for the Ukrainian service of the BBC World Service. And then in 2006 he founded the No Borders initiative, which provided legal support to refugees and other forced migrants in Ukraine. In February 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Maksym immediately volunteered for the armed forces of Ukraine. He was appointed the commander of an infantry platoon, but was captured by the Russian military in June 2022 in the Luhansk region. He was accused of war crimes, all fabricated. He was forced to sign a confession under extreme duress and had to suffer 2 years of torture and deprivation. And he was released as part of a prisoner swap on October the 18th of last year after a sustained campaign demanding his release. I don't want to say any more other than to hand over the floor to Maksym, who will talk for however long he feels like talking, and then I will have a short conversation with him, and then we'll throw open the discussion to the floor. Maksym, thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you very much for organizing this event and for having me for this invitation. Thank you all for coming here. It is emotional, especially as you have seen in the audience there are people whom I haven't seen since the beginning of the full-scale invasion into Ukraine by Russian aggressors. So yes, it's like, it is really emotional to me. And it's not very easy to say anything after such an introduction, you know, because I listen to it and I feel well, you know, this is an introduction of someone really important, and I don't feel like it. Unfortunately, we just had jokes with colleagues today that one might try to defend human rights for years and years, being sometimes in risky situations and saving people's lives, or trying to save them at least, and to fix what is broken by the state authorities here and there when it comes to human rights and civil liberties. And then in the war situation to be captured and become POW and being released, and suddenly you are well known. Not because of what you've done in years before that, but I realize that it is a story which maybe surprises many people in a way, especially due to narratives which are spread not only by Russian propaganda, but sometimes by dishonest media outlets elsewhere. I don't know why they have decided, or when they have decided, I mean Russian aggressors and the Russian interrogators from Investigatory Committee of Russian Federation, the special team which was assigned to Luhansk to investigate so-called war crimes committed by Ukrainian soldiers, why they have decided to pick me, the first one in Luhansk, to fabricate a criminal case against me. I think it's because they knew that I'm a human rights defender and I'm a journalist, and also because I angered them. At one point in time, on my birthday actually, on the 16th of July 2022, there was another interrogation. Well, every conversation was called interrogation, even if we were not interrogated. They rather tried to break our spirit, to shake our beliefs. And I was told that I have to give an interview to certain important international media, and that interview should be filled with what they want me to say. I said, I don't mind giving an interview, but I will say only things I know. I said I understand very clearly that they can force me to do that, and I will do that at the end of the day, but it will be visible, and they have to do something. I will not just, agree. And this is when one of them became furious and said, we will put you to jail. We will sentence you as a war criminal. I said, there is nothing to sentence me for. I haven't done anything wrong. And he said, that's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. All of you, those who dared to take up arms, to resist us, you are all war criminals to us. And it turned out that literally in 3 weeks' time, the criminal case was opened, and I underwent the forceful interrogation, during which for several hours, with use of pain and brutal force, I was explained my options. What happens if I confess, and what happens if I don't. I didn't know why they picked me. I thought they might use me for propaganda purposes. At the time, as it turned out later, I didn't know about that. Texts, articles, and posts on social media started to appear labeling me Nazi and saying that I'm some sort of a extreme right-wing nationalist, and that I'm a commander of some executioner's platoon or a regiment even. But that provoked a backlash, because there were so many people who actually knew me in the years of my previous work. And other texts started to appear explaining that someone who helped refugees and asylum seekers, who fought against discrimination and xenophobia, who assisted victims of hate crimes if they survived, or their loved ones if they haven't. If he is labeled Nazi, it means that the system which does it is fundamentally lying about everything they say. I think this is why, when I was sentenced to 13 years of penal colony of strict regime in March 2023, there were no cameras present. I thought there will be, or there would be, there were no cameras present. Only later on, I was visited by the investigatory committee again, and they recorded this confession video with me, which was so helpless when it comes to the way, I had to learn the text by heart and to say it on camera, and it was so obvious that this is not my text. Actually, I didn't mind even read it aloud. And I knew again what happens if I don't. Coming back to my human rights work, I'm really often asked how comes someone who protested war would he be living in Ukraine or the UK? And I lived in the UK for some time, and I took part in anti-war movement. someone who despises violence, always stating that violence dehumanizes us, makes us less human, who is anti-militarist in his worldview, because he thinks that military have very specific role to play, and it is unhealthy for society when there is a military mindset expanded all over society. How comes he joined the armed forces voluntarily and went to fight and doesn't see the contradiction? To me it was quite natural, I should say, for a number of reasons. Some of them were technical. I was in Kyiv on the 24th of February 2022. It's my native city. And the battle already raged on the outskirts of Kyiv straight away. And there were airstrikes. I was fortunate enough to have most of my loved ones been safe. At that moment, it was by chance. They just went, elsewhere and found themselves in relative safety. Most, not all of them. For instance, my parents adamantly refused to leave the city. They said that they would feel as if they give it up to the occupiers, but they never believed that Kyiv can fall, and it didn't. A lot of other people had actually to take their families to the western border of Ukraine and then to go back and go to the conscription stations. I didn't have that duty, and I was, and still am, of course, a citizen of Ukraine, so I had to defend my country. But there were other reasons as well. Still in 2014, when Russia had just started to occupy Ukrainian territory, specifically Crimea and the east of Ukraine, waging proxy war, which was not somehow realized by most of European countries at the time. Me and my colleagues, we worked a lot trying to assist internally displaced persons, sometimes in helpless situations, and witnessing a lot of human grief and suffering. And by the end of the year, I realized that I can do this work, or these activities. It's not work. Like human rights, it's not work. You can't do human rights 9 to 5 in your office and then go back home and leave human rights in your office. It just doesn't work this way. I can do what I do only because there are other people, including my friends, at the front line who defend me and who allow me to do these things. So when 24th of February 2022 arrived, together with Russian full-scale invasion, I thought that this is my time to defend my colleagues from human rights organizations, allowing them to do their work, specifically in such dangerous times, by defending them at the front line. And there was one more thing. While dealing with asylum seekers from different countries fleeing persecution, there were asylum seekers and refugees from Russia among them. And I knew their situation. I knew what they were fleeing from. I also was in touch with Russian human rights defenders. I mean, real ones, not those who call themselves human rights defenders, but real ones. So I knew pretty well human rights situation in Russia. And I thought I knew what kind of human rights situation could be on the territories occupied by Russia, which is very simple. There would be no human rights as a notion, as an important thing. It is just not part of Russian world ideology. Everything we've achieved in human rights realm, and we've achieved quite a lot, much less than we wanted to. But over the years of struggle and advocacy and cooperation and education, we've achieved quite a lot of good things. That all would be erased to the scratch by Russian invaders. And if I was called human rights defender, there was only one option at the time: to defend human rights, to take up arms, and to join the armed forces of Ukraine, and this is what I've done. So currently at the moment, I still can call myself anti-militarist. Thank you very much. And Human rights are at the very core of my life. And actually I'm going back to human rights activities and human rights work. But I'm at the same time proud of being a senior lieutenant of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, part of the defense forces, even if not on active military duty at the moment. And I don't see any contradiction, because we defend values. We defend the most fundamental things we are trying to build our lives upon. And suddenly it turns out that one of few countries in our region, maybe in the world, which takes very seriously things like people's agency, self-determination, freedom, human rights, civil liberties, and is able and willing to fight for them for more than 3 years already against prevailing is a very mild word. Aggressor state is Ukraine. And of course the perspectives currently are quite unclear in many ways, but I think we've done well. And I think we've got messages to deliver to our partners as well, who still regard Russian war against Ukraine as some distant story, which will never affect them. We perceive it as our common fight. Basically, we're defending not only Ukrainian society, but all societies, all communities who want to live, or to strive to live freely, in solidarity, in respect towards human dignity, and without fear. This is what we are trying to do, having incredible challenges in front of us, but of course we need our international partners, we need international support. And this is why I'm touring, this month, European countries and cities, trying just to talk to people, everyone who wants to listen, and some people who don't want to listen. Of course, there are exceptions. There are people whom I wouldn't be able to talk to and not willing to talk to. But yeah, I think we have something to say. And I feel it been my duty, because some of my guys from my platoon, 4 persons, are still in captivity. And some other people, a lot of them, whom I spent time with in prison in Luhansk, and later on in a penal colony in Luhansk region. Both military POWs and civilians in captivity, they are still there. Some of those whom we started to defend Ukraine in the springtime of 2022 are still at the front line, some of them in Kurshina now. So I feel it been my duty to contribute what I can to our common efforts. And this is why I'm here tonight, and I am so grateful to you for coming. And yeah, it's my pleasure to see you. I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Maksym, thank you. I'm going to ask you a few questions from the chair first of all, and then we'll throw it open to the audience. But I'd like to start. You said you explained why you didn't feel any contradiction as a pacifist anti-militarist about signing up, and that was very clear. But let me ask you, what sort of training had you had before you signed up for frontline duty against the Russian military?
Thank you. This is a very good question, because I was asking it myself. I haven't had any combat experience, of course. I haven't had any experience of active military duty service before. During my, while getting my degree at the Kyiv National Taras Shevchenko University, I've received some very basic, well, actually bits and pieces of military education. But it was last millennia. It was in 90s of 20th century when no one actually expected this to be useful at any point in time. And I graduated from Faculty of Philosophy. So, you know, philosophers were taught at the military department of the university how to be some sort of motivating officers, like commissars or someone. And more than 25 years later, I haven't remembered anything at all. And what I remembered bits and pieces, but they were not useful. So it was almost done. But still, I've held an officer's rank. After that education, I was a lieutenant of reserve. And this is why when I said, okay, I want to join just territorial defense, you know, I'm a soldier, just give me something. Give me a shovel. If you run out of assault rifles, give me a shovel. Let me dig. Let me do something. They said, no, you are an officer. This is why you are a platoon commander. Like, what? I just tried not to pretend to be someone whom I wasn't. Fortunately, in my platoon, I had guys with some both active service experience and combat experience. I encouraged experience sharing a lot. We haven't had time for learning. We haven't had time for training. It was springtime of 2022. There were also shortages, like shortage of ammo, shortage of petrol. So we really exchanged a lot. We tried to find manuals to read and learn from them. We watched a lot of YouTube. Apparently you can find the most incredible things on YouTube. How to operate rocket-propelled grenade launcher was one of my favorite, actually, etc. And you know, it's infantry. So it's like the most endangered part of the armed forces. But also we did not have to operate very complicated machinery. So we could watch videos. But of course, what I knew from my previous activities and work, I asked myself what can be useful in this regard. I tried in previous years to care about people, and I had 20 guys under my command. And I thought, well, this is the role of a commander, to care about my guys. And very soon, everyone, not only in my platoon, but in all the neighboring detachments, knew that if you need something, you should go to Moses, Moisei, which was my call sign. You should go to Moses, because he's got stockpiles of whatever you need, basically, because he's supplied by volunteers whom he's found God knows where. And I tried to care about my guys, well, at least until the moment when we were surrounded in Luhansk region in June 2022. And
you were all arrested together?
Not all of us. Almost half of my platoon, 8 soldiers, and me, being the 9th. And the others, they had to join us later on. But apparently the village was encircled and stormed by Russians before that. They managed to leave it in organized column. Some of them are now not in this world, unfortunately, already, after the years of fighting. And I've learned about that only after I was released. Some others, among those who were captured, out of 8, 4 were exchanged before me. 2 out of them came back to the front line, and 1 paid with his life, actually, after already being captured and released. Last year, about these days in March, and 4 others are still in captivity. Today is a very happy day for me, because a lot of you know that there was a quite big, significant prisoners of war exchange between Russia and Ukraine. There were no my guys among those released, but there was someone whom I spent some time with in prison in Luhansk, and after I was released, I was in touch with his wife. So today I sent her a greeting, and she's so happy, and she's so grateful. Every exchange is actually a celebration for me, personal one.
So when you were captured, you must have had all sorts of ideas and imagination about what being in captivity by the Russian military actually means. Was it as bad as you were anticipating, or what happened? What did you have to deal with in captivity?
I think I had, as most of us, well, in the first place, what was wrong was that we never thought about captivity before it happened. For some reason, I've met just one person, probably in captivity, who had this thought beforehand. All the others, we processed thoughts about being, 200, which means killed in action, or 300 wounded in action. We, of course, thought about it. And some tried to prepare for it. Like, for instance, I've left my passwords from social media and emails to my friends. It was for the occasion if I'm killed in action. So, that they can do auto-reply in email that, this person doesn't receive this email anymore, this sort of thing. Apparently it was very useful, because when I was captured, they, together with digital Laboratory of Digital Security, which is an activist NGO in Ukraine, they blocked all my social media in a very short time. And that was useful because afterwards my interrogators tried to get access to them, but they couldn't. So it's a good thing to prepare yourself for different situations, but we've never thought about captivity, no. And I had like best case scenario and worst case scenario. Best case scenario would be to to get some beating probably at the front line straight after the captivity, and then being put in some POW's camp, being treated as POW, maybe a bit harsher than Geneva Conventions entail. Worst case scenario, except execution right after captivity, was we didn't know what to expect. The reality was somewhere in between, but closer to the worst case scenario, of course. And it changed. Those who captured us, they actually didn't treat us badly. I think they were happy to escape a firefight. Later on, it became different with other units. And then there were first two Russian military officers doing video propaganda who visited us on our way to Luhansk, as it turned out later. And the first thing they told me, the first thing was never pronounce the word war, because there is no war, there is a special military operation. Then they said, you think you are POWs, you are not. You just disappeared in the battle zone, and you might never appear again, especially if you misbehave or you don't follow the orders. You will be POWs when you reach your destination point, you are registered, and this is when Geneva Conventions will start to apply to you. If you don't believe it, we'll take you to the backyard and show you the hole in the soil with remnants of those who didn't understand the point. And actually they lied, because Geneva Conventions never started to apply to us. There was no international humanitarian law in there. There were no Geneva Conventions. Would there be Geneva Convention 3 on treatment of POWs, or Geneva Convention 4 on treatment of civilian population? They recorded propaganda video with us saying we had to say that we are treated nicely, we get water, we get food, we are not beaten. It was all true. It was all true. The transportation was really bad and painful, but otherwise it was true. After they left, I was finally in a couple of hours beaten for the first time, like properly, with a wooden stick by a Russian military officer who wanted to show other POWs that they can do whatever to us, basically. But also it was his way to teach us, as he said, Ukrainian history. He took his phone out of his pocket and he recited Putin's address to the nation in those parts which were concerned Ukrainian history. And POWs, meaning us, were kneeling in front of him with our hands tied behind our backs. And he forced POWs one after another to repeat these quotes word by word. And if there was a slip of tongue or a pause, I was beaten with a wooden stick, because I was the only officer. I was their commander, most of them. And also because he personally didn't like me. It was quite obvious. And also he was a sadist. It was quite clear that he enjoys the process, especially by the end of it. He stopped reciting anything. He started mumbling, things which just signaled about his psychological condition of enjoyment. Later on in jail, well, I didn't expect we will be kept just in the prison. There were no POW camps, and apparently up to now, Ukraine established 5 centers, detention centers for prisoners of war from Russia, according to the Geneva Convention. Russia established none. However, more than 120 places of detention identified in Russia and in occupied territories where military and civilian prisoners are held. The only difference was that POWs in prison were treated in much harsher way, lived in separate wing of the prison and under much stricter regime than those charged or convicted with criminal offenses. I learned about it personally after I was convicted and transferred to the criminal part of the prison, which was much more comfortable. You know, they could go to walks 1 hour in a day, while POWs were never taken out of their cells just for interrogations. They were not beaten. They were not forced to do sit-ups and push-ups as long as one of them starts to fall. They had toilet paper. They had things to cut their fingernails. Their food was better, etc., etc. So you might have a vague idea of the conditions of POWs. Yeah, this is what it was, and very soon to me it started to look like, of course, it was not some decision of the head of the prison. It was everywhere. There were places with better conditions and with worse conditions, but they were all below zero. For the second time, I came across the notion of the Geneva Conventions when I was sentenced, because in my verdict, so-called court verdict, it's been mentioned that I violated Geneva Conventions. This is why they sentenced me. These were only 2 cases when I came across Geneva Conventions while in captivity.
Maksym, you were sentenced to 13 years for these alleged crimes, these fabricated crimes. I'm sure you've read prison literature from the Soviet period, from the Nazis, and so on and so forth. What is it like actually having to cope psychologically with the uncertainty of not knowing when you're going to be released, not knowing whether you're going to be beaten or tortured? How do you keep your mind alive and in an equilibrium that enables you to survive this sort of experience?
It is not a very easy task, of course. It is not easy task. It's just not easy, okay? To me, poor physical conditions could be difficult sometimes, but we coped with them, more or less. You know, when you cannot sleep because you are hungry, and this happened quite often in first couple of months of captivity, I started to imagine stories like satirical, political, dystopian story, which my cellmates admired, and they demanded continuation. So I had a cycle of short stories depicting the world where there is an empire and the alliance. and then the whole dystopian thing unrolls. So, I mean, this was a mechanism to cope, and the same comes with some other things. But psychological pressure is a bit more difficult, especially the uncertainty for some, and fear to the others. To me, my main enemy was fear. I think I've never experienced this, survival instinct-based fear, which is physiological, which paralyzes your body, which basically turns you into an object. This is when I realized that anticipation of pain is worse than pain itself, sometimes at least. And I really tried hard not to let it control me, but still to be in control of it, of this fear, because I really was worried that at some point I might do something, being afraid. I could not forget myself for later on. I was fortunate enough it didn't happen, no. And I was fortunate as well because when it comes to uncertainty, I was a lucky exception. Everyone in captivity has their ups and downs emotionally. I haven't doubted for a single minute that people out there, my loved ones and my friends and my colleagues, my relatives, that they fight for me, that they think about me, that they talk about me. We were held incommunicado for the first year, probably. But there was not a single minute when I had doubts. So I never had doubts that I will be released sooner or later. That was a matter of time. So it was a lot about training patience in a way and finding techniques to stay sane and to keep myself distant from mood swings. And my main technique, well, there were several, some of them were religious actually. I prayed, I composed my own prayers, but also some of them were just mental. I was really afraid of losing my work in foreign language, my English. So I composed, and actually I imagined situations when I have to give a speech or a talk to audience, English-speaking audience elsewhere, and I did it in my head. So I composed texts. So now this is what it is. But also I've written opinion columns, and in my head again, of course, we didn't have paper or a pen. We didn't have toilet paper. Then what to say about paper? We learned English in the cells. I taught English to my cellmates. I never taught any language to anyone before. It turned out to be very interesting, especially if you don't have texts and you don't have a paper and a pen. But there were other things, and one of them was to think about people whom I met in my life, both close friends and loved ones, but also those whom I just met for a minute, maybe years ago, and somehow my memory brought it back to me. And the more I thought, I realized how fortunate I am, to meet all the wonderful people. So I think if any guard at that moment just looked in our cell through the peephole, he would be surprised to see this gray-green skinned, unshaved and with uncut hair, dirty, hungry Ukrainian prisoner of war, smiling and being absolutely happy. Because I thought about other people, and this is actually when I realized how much other people matter to me and how important they are. So there were these inner kind of things which I tried to keep and preserve and develop, because this was the realm they could not get into. And of course, the last half a year last several months were different, because we were in the colony and we had access to books. and books really kept my head together. And then we were able to send and receive letters. Not to Ukraine, though, of course, but we still managed at some point. So there was some communication with the outside world, and it was different.
Did you know when you were released that you were being released, or were you just taken somewhere, and how did that happen?
We were never told that we are going for an exchange or for the release. It was after the morning checkup, me and my brother-in-arms, a wonderful person, Sergei Boychuk. We were taken to duty station of the guards, and we were told that in half an hour we should be here with our staff being ready for transfer. And when I asked transfer to, "Этап куда, начальник?" he said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, come on, you do know." He said, "No, frankly, I don't, because it was never the case that someone was ordered for transfer this morning on this very morning." I'm not sure if he was lying, but the next officers or guards, they knew, of course, but they never told us. So we were just thinking that probably we were going to the hospital, because Sergei's health was rapidly deteriorating. He was taken captive, he'd been badly injured, and then he was severely tortured, like really badly. I was not, but my health started to fail a little bit earlier. 2 weeks before that, I fainted and almost passed away for no obvious reason. And we were promised to be taken to the hospital, but then they said, "Who cares about you? We won't do that." And our next option was that we are taken to Russia proper, to the colony, because there were gossips about that for quite some time. And the third option was exchange, but we tried not to think about it, because it would be too difficult to live through the disappointment. And we realized, I think we started to realize it on our way, because first we were transported to another colony. Other guys were added to us. We went through the most severe strip search in all this time. But then we were taken further, and there were other POWs put in the sections in the prison van in a way that we couldn't move, really. And we had our hands and eyes being tied with stick tape. This is how we spent an evening, night, and morning. But we've heard already the engines, so we knew that we are at some landing strip, military one probably. So we expected being loaded onto a plane. And this is what happened next morning. Only after we arrived to Belarus, we were allowed to sit in the buses. We were given water and food for the first time in more than 24 hours. And we already knew that sure that we are going to Ukraine. But it came slowly, and even when we saw Ukrainian national colors and Ukrainian uniform, we were happy, but I'm glad it did not come to me all at the same time. That would be very difficult to manage. It came in waves, and it was very nice.
Maksym, I'm going to ask you one more question before handing it over to the audience, and that is, since you came out in October of last year, politically things have gone all over the place, and of course in the past 2 months since the Trump administration came in, Ukraine's immediate, mid-term and long-term situation looks much bleaker than it was. How do you assess what's going on in the world at the moment, having been through all that you've been through and knowing what Ukraine has been through? Do you retain some hope and some determination? How do you see the world in March 2025?
These are very difficult times, of course, and Frankly speaking, as a former international news and current affairs journalist, but years and years ago, I expected Trump administration to have a drift towards Moscow at some point. But what we witness is not a drift, it looks more like a U-turn. Basically, not talking about internal US politics, although it is a very interesting subject. I'm afraid, in my understanding, Trump and Putin, they share some important part of the worldview. They share the vision that nations' fate and millions of people's plight should be decided by a narrow club of powerful white men who might be able to divide the world among themselves, totally disregarding human agency and self-determination and human freedom. I hope to be wrong, but I'm afraid I'm not, because we see constant attempts to decide Ukraine's future without Ukraine, and Ukrainians' plight without Ukrainians. Well, it is unacceptable. It is just unacceptable. And suddenly we see that, as I mentioned before, Ukraine is probably the country which takes the notions of human dignity and freedom the most seriously, because it fights for them for more than 3 years. Maybe finally these events of the recent weeks help Europe to get itself together and to regain its subjectivity and to coordinate its both defense policies, armaments productions, but also policies when it comes to values and rights and liberties. And quite a lot of Ukrainians, I believe, now see Ukraine not only as a candidate to join the European Union, but see Ukraine as probably one of the engines of European integration, because it is a country which sacrificed a lot for fundamental values. Ukraine itself, as I saw it, as I see it in these months, goes through extreme fatigue. People are very tired. Well, this is a war of attrition, and it is felt, of course. At the same time, our community paid so much, such a high price in these 3 years, that just to give up is not an option. Just to say, okay, we don't care, people do care. People do. So, yeah, it is uncertain at the moment, but what is clear that there are some red lines Ukrainian leadership does not want and will not cross. Also because Ukrainian leaders cannot do whatever they like. They are not tsars like Putin, and some of these red lines actually were made quite clear. It is quite uncertain what future lies in future for Ukraine. What is clear that Ukraine continues to fight tooth and nail for very important things, at the same time being in need of closer cooperation with our, in the first place, European partners. This is for sure.
Thank you, Maksym. Maksym has very generously agreed to answer questions from the audience, so let me... I haven't got my glasses on, so if I don't recognize you, don't be offended. And please introduce yourself.
Anton Shekhovtsov. I'm a senior fellow at the Central European University, and hopefully personal friend of Max.
Yes, you are.
Max, you know, there is almost like a socio-political law that during peacetime there are so many conflicts in societies, internal conflicts in societies, and the polarization and everything. And when there is a war or external threat, people usually sort of unite or rally around the flag. You spend many months outside of Ukraine, and talking to very different people. Maybe during your sort of civilian life, you would not even talk to those people. Human rights activism is still a bubble, yeah, and probably it was a different for you, but still. So you spent a lot of time with different types of Ukrainians, and when you returned, maybe you also had to talk to other, a different type of Ukrainians. So what would be your, sort of a minimum definition of what you would, or who you would talk to, and what maybe past conflicts did you forget, from Ukraine, considering this, rallying around the flag and the need for resilience and internal resilience in Ukraine?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, thank you, my personal friend Anton. I'm really happy to see you. And I think it's me. Well, there is this really rallying around the flag feeling, which was actually started in the very first days of the full-scale invasion. There were even those visual memes on social media which have shown everyone from, anarchists to liberals and to far-right uniting against the Russian invaders. A little bit it felt like almost like partly like Maidan protests, when people with very different worldview found themselves on the same side of the barricade, because on the other side of the barricade there was this bulldozer basically with an intent to eliminate everything and everyone. And there was this task to stop it and to dismantle it, and then to solve our internal differences, because otherwise there would be no one to solve internal differences. This is about the same feeling. What really interests me, or I actually was, I hope it is not a wishful thinking, but what I've heard, even some people from the far-right milieu, community or environment, a lot of them now speak the language of human rights when it comes to Ukraine. Maybe just a choice of words or vocabulary, but it seems to be an important part of Ukrainian fabric of everyday life. What is difficult for me, though, or will be difficult, is after the end of hostilities, at least for some time. There are people who identify themselves as part of Ukrainian community and Ukrainian society, but when it doesn't come to national colors, name of an identity, and sometimes language, in many other fundamental things, they're indistinguishable from Russians. I mean, from Russian world, from values of Russian world. And this is something very difficult for me to swallow, because I think we have certain dangers from inside as well, and one of them, in full understanding that Ukraine is fighting for its freedom, is to start thinking that we are kind of immune from becoming, authoritarian system or authoritarian society. We are not. No human community is, no human society is, and we should remember that. And if at some point our temporary wartime centralization of the decision-making system becomes permanent and becomes more authoritarian, and then we slowly turn into little Russia named Ukraine with different flag, but everything else very similar, what are we then fighting for? So this is something really important to me. Of course, wartime is the most risky for human rights. The human rights and civil liberties are curtailed for the defense purposes. But the state, whatever state, always has the tendency to extend the limitations to a maximum and to use and abuse its powers if there is no system of oversight from the civil society and if there is no system of checks and balances and institutions strong enough to resist it. So I really hope that with so many human rights groups, organizations and initiatives, and now I think Ukraine has more than ever organizations which at least call themselves human rights ones, that will be able to avoid this risk, to mitigate it, and yeah, to stay Ukraine, not Russia, whatever name it is under. In the meantime, when it comes to practice, I've seen a lot of people of almost opposite ideological views at the front line, not only fighting for Ukraine, but cooperating among themselves and supporting among themselves, because apparently in that very situation, a fighter, a soldier, realizes that another human being is the most important value and someone to be treasured, disregarding ideological and other differences. And this is integral part of my worldview. I really kind of treasure these moments.
Thank you.
Alexander Christiani, former Austrian ambassador. Do you think that as a price for a kind of a lasting settlement, Ukraine would be prepared to make painful territorial concessions? Thank you.
Given the current situation, again, it is a political question, and I'm not a politician, please don't forget it. So it's my very subjective personal opinion. Given the current situation, it is a very difficult question to swallow. But I don't think so, for several reasons. The first one is that I am not personally, idolizing territorial integrity as such, as a notion. But to me it is important, not only to me, to remember about our compatriots who live in the territories occupied by Russia, who are Ukrainian nationals. And we talk about millions of people, who are currently effectively hostages of Russia, and who can be used and are used as a disposable material in different ways, starting from putting them in jail with the hope that they can be exchanged for something, and ending with deportation of children. I don't think as a country we can forget about them or just give them away. As Oleg Sentsov, famous political prisoner of Russia, once said, "I am not a serf to be transferred together with the land." So we don't transfer people with the land, of course, and this is one thing. Another thing is that, of course, that would mean the end to what remains still of European security system. Because basically that means that one state can invade the neighboring country, take away part of its territory and get away with it. Yeah, it will be just the end of European and international law as we know it, been replaced with might makes right world. And there is another reason. The thing is that Russia does not wage a war for Donbass or Zaporizhia region or Kherson region. This is not the aim, this is not the goal. Russia waged this war to eliminate Ukraine as such, to subjugate it, to erase it as a separate entity. And in general, it wasn't hidden that Ukraine, for at least in Russian propaganda world, is just a stage in a global confrontation against what they call in their propaganda degraded liberal West, which has forgotten what traditional values are. And Russian soldier is very keen to remind Europe what traditional values are. Frankly, actually, no one could tell me what traditional values are from those guys, but this is a different issue. So giving up occupied territories would just give Russia a pause to regroup, to mobilize itself, and to relaunch its attack on a bigger scale. This is why, I don't think it is feasible to think about that. Although it is understandable that regaining the territories in the borders of 1991 by military means in the nearest future it doesn't seem to be possible. But of course, it seems currently that there will be no official recognition of the occupation, of the annexation of those territories. This is what it looks like to me.
Cameron?
Thank you very much. I'm Cameron Abadi. I'm a fellow at the Institute. You spoke very persuasively about how it's not inconsistent to fight for Ukraine and to be anti-militarist at the same time. And at the same time, you discussed the fatigue setting in the country. And that reminded me about one of the arguments that is being made in the United States, that Ukraine is having trouble recruiting new soldiers for the war. And I'm curious, first of all, if that is true, if that's the case, and what the conversation about conscription is like in Ukraine right now. And second of all, what do you believe about the legitimacy of people trying to avoid conscription? Is that a legitimate viewpoint to not want to fight in a war of this kind?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, as I mentioned before, as we all know, this is a war of attrition, and it's not only about financial or technical resources, but it is about human resources, even if I don't like to combine these two words. But in wartime, there are human resources. Every time I'm kind of scared of this thing. I apologize for that. And of course, we've seen queues to the conscription stations in the first days and weeks of the full-scale invasion, when people wanted to go and fight and defend their country. And I know cases when people actually supported Ukraine's image as a corrupt country by giving bribes to be included into the armed forces of Ukraine. Usually it happens vice versa, but this time it was like this. But these people went and joined the forces of defense in 2022 and in 2023 and in 2024. Of course, sooner or later, the willing find themselves there already. And then you have to deal with those who do not really want to go and fight. So there is a discussion about it. It is not that one-dimensional, because the discussion is about methods of recruiting new soldiers. But also it's about the fact that there are still options not used. And if situation was desperate, that they would be used. The conscription of those, or mobilization of those of 18 years old and older. Currently it's not the case. They can serve in the army, but they are not sent to the front line, and it's not obligatory for them. Ukraine still hasn't done it. There is a protracted discussion about women serving in the army. Currently there are quite a lot of women, but they are all volunteers. Some of my friends actually fight since the springtime of 2022. I mean, ladies. And it's still not used, so it's not that desperate, but the situation is different from especially first 2 years of full-scale invasion. It's true. It is true. But there is one more thing which might be not that visible. If the first stage of the full-scale invasion was primarily the war of artillery, currently we face the war of drones. And we have a lot of cases when at different parts of the front line, troops with less fighters but better technically equipped with drones in the first place successfully resist and repel attacks of the enemy and even regain territories. It is more high-tech war than any conflict before, probably, in the world's history. So quite a lot of military analysts, and I'm not one, but they pointed that saying that we need more people, but we need more people not in the infantry. We need more people who are knowledgeable enough and who can be trained to operate equipment which helps us to regain control of some parts of the territory. In the first place, it's about drones. And we need drones themselves, which are currently produced by Ukraine, the cheapest version at least, in huge numbers. So to me, it is an open question to what extent mobilization and recruitment stays the critical issue in Ukraine, if it is already critical, or probably not yet. But technical equipment is a critical issue for sure, and armaments.
I'll see if I can.
Thank you so very much for being here and sharing all these experiences. Apologize. I'm Daniela Karatas. I'm with IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, and wanted to share with everybody, probably everybody knows, we have been on the ground since the very first days, trying to ensure the whole world that we are there, and we are trying to make all efforts to keep away the risk that we will all blow out. Actually we have witnessed videos not released to the public when professionals inside Zaporozhye were shouting to the soldiers outside, saying, "Stop shooting, idiots, we will all blow out," together with the whole world. I wanted to ask, are the Ukrainians aware about this? Do they think this is efficient? Do they feel ensured that huge efforts are put into this in order to control this high risk? Considering that there is a lot of political work also done behind the scenes in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. I think at least those Ukrainians who try to follow the situation closely, and currently this is a huge part, if not the majority of Ukrainian society, they're aware, at least to an extent. I remember the very days when the territory where the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is situated was taken by the Russian forces. There were videos from CCTV cameras actually showing the shooting. And one of them actually I put on my Facebook at the time. I was already in the military, but still not captured. Since then, I think this awareness is still there. Not only about Zaporizhzhia, though, recent strike on Chernobyl nuclear power plant is also extremely worrisome. To what extent it is effective? You know, at least international organizations, your agency in the first place, from time to time have access to the object, to the plant, because to many other places now international organizations have access including, by the way, places of detention of prisoners of war. We were never visited by ICRC or any other agency of this kind. At the same time, in captivity, I had to watch a lot of Russian propaganda. What started to worry me at some point that in propaganda shows they started to talk consistently about their readiness for a nuclear conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And when they started to say this out and aloud, it was not the first time. They actually started it before the full-scale invasion. All those infamous phrases of Russian propagandists. But then they started to talk about it more often, kind of preparing their audience for a possibility for this option. And I'm not sure to what extent, to put it mildly, their readiness for nuclear blackmail can be mitigated by international agencies. They don't seem to be, reasonable or cooperative enough. I'm just not sure about it.
Thank you.
When you were captured, did you get an impression of proceedings behind the Russian front in the rear? That, I mean, organization, logistics, the condition of troops?
Most of our way to Luhansk prison, we were taken by trucks with our hands and legs tied, and the trucks were covered, so we haven't seen much, frankly speaking. Amount of troops and armored vehicles and tanks and Grad systems and Solntsepek and all that stuff surprised us when we were taking the first part of our journey, when we were able still to see that. It was a big number, and some seemed to be battle-hardened, quite. However, I cannot assess their readiness or the level of organization. And also when it comes to morale, there were very different instances. In one case, a Russian soldier guarding us, when he was asked if he's dead, he said that most of us are of the same age as his dad. And I asked if his dad fights in this war. He said, of course not. I'm a soldier and he is not. I proceeded to ask, is he happy that you fight in Ukraine? He said, of course no. Of course he is not happy. And what to be happy about? It's just another shameful war, which really surprised me, because he talked to Ukrainian POW, So we came across different people, actually, when it comes to morale and to understanding what is going on. But they were all united by their readiness and desire to follow orders, whatever they were. On technical side of it, no, I couldn't assess much.
We've got time for one more question. I see a hand there at the back. This looks like a brown jersey from here. It's Nick.
Okay, well, could you pass on the mic?
And Nick, wait for the microphone.
Thank you. Nick Van Prague. I was just wondering if you knew anything about conditions of POWs in Ukraine, Russian prisoners, and whether the awareness that they're prisoners on both sides has any impact on the treatment that you received and that Russians receive in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. While in captivity, we didn't know, of course, we didn't know much about what's going on in Ukraine. We knew that there are Russian POWs, quite significant group. But I remember we discussed it in the colony, in prison and in the colony. And if someone actually among Ukrainian prisoners of war said, it's interesting how our guys treat Russian POWs. I really hope that they go at least through something we went through. And I actually, most of the time, did not have to interfere because other Ukrainian POWs straight away said, no, you shouldn't say that because we are not like them. And remember, international organizations have access to Russian POWs in Ukraine all of the time. So we were sure that at least for this reason, if not for legal and ethical, but they are treated differently. I was happy when I came back to realize that this was the case, because I talked to people who actually visited the centers for POWs, both from international organizations and from Ukrainian civil society. And there are Ukrainian volunteer groups who actually help Russian POWs to establish contact with their relatives in Russia. Something unseen and unheard of in detention places of Ukrainian prisoners of war in Russia. And the standards are very different also. At the end of last year, there was a report by the Office of High Commissioner of Human Rights, UN High Commissioner of Human Rights, released where it was pointed out that when they visited the centers for Russian POWs, detention places in Ukraine, detainees told them, number of detainees, that they experienced physical violence soon after capture, like beatings and stuff, which was used straight away by Russian propaganda, of course. I cannot imagine Office of the UN High Commissioner of Human Rights visiting us in Russian detention, being able to talk to us under conditions where we could say anything critical about Russia and survive in that. I mean, that's just unseen. But the happier I was to learn that after this report, actually Ukraine launched criminal proceedings against perpetrators of this violence, and that they will be brought to justice. So, yeah, the situation is extremely, extremely different. And when it comes to awareness and treatment, this is a very difficult question. In some cases, people are already known, so spreading information about them does not change much. At the same time, overall logic, when I try to understand at least some part of logic under which the system functions, I mean system of Russian captivity, the only one which worked was the logic of a slave trade. Basically, we were goods, we were items to be traded for something, especially since we were convicted. We were more expensive. We had price tags over our heads, and this is why the more this person was known in Ukraine or internationally, it meant that potential buyer is more interested. So probably this item should be better preserved, not to put him at very difficult jobs, or maybe not to subject him to physical violence. At the same time, this item becomes more expensive, so it's more difficult to change it because the price is high. So this is why I understand when the Ukrainian authorities advise relatives not to say publicly anything about their loved ones in captivity, because it makes exchange more difficult. But sometimes it can save people's lives, or at least some part of health. This is how I see it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we could, I'm sure, listen to Maksym all evening, but I have to say that he has a very punishing schedule, running around Europe and talking to all sorts of different audiences. We here at the IWM, we often have a lot of people who analyze policy. We don't quite so frequently have guests who are not only able to analyze policy, but have also suffered the consequences of some of the worst policies that are being implemented on our continent at the moment. And so I would like the most sincere round of applause for Maksym Butkevych, and thank you very much from us for giving up your time to come and see us. This has been a really fascinating and extraordinary evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.